right. Well, how about them Astros?
How about them assholes?
All right. So we make no bones about it. We're big Philly fans here. We grew up Philly fans. Um, and we're just coming off of a insane 2022 season where we both kind of, through the year of doing our 2022 pods, had talked on and off little quips about baseball. And man, were you prepared for them to even sniff the postseason?
No, and I think if you listen, well, one thing I want to mention, I think both of us have spent more time at the ballpark between the Vet and Citizens Bank than we ever did in the library. So, there's that. Um, but
Yeah,
also,
you're not wrong.
I think if you listen back to our Welcome Back Major League Baseball, no, not you, John Middleton, podcast we did earlier in the year, um, when they ended the strike, we talked about exactly what they should do, and I think we both said that they should make the playoffs, but based on the bullpen and on the pitching staff, we said that we didn't think they would go very far in the playoffs, but that they should at the very least make a wild card position. Um, and boy, they really like far exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing. So, and I want to find this. I find this funny in a twofold reason. So, one, we both kind of thought they'd sneak into a wild card position and not really go beyond that. The funny thing is that they sneak into a wild card position before we thought that was when we recorded that was before they signed Schwarber and Castellanos. So, which is crazy because they signed him in a short period of time there, right after we recorded that.
Right.
I find that funny. They still snuck into the playoffs the same way that we thought they were going to, but they had two stars that had they been there before, we probably would have mentioned that differently.
Right.
Hear me out here. So let's go back in time when we recorded that episode that Schwarber and Castellanos are on the team. Hindsight being 2020, not knowing how that all fleshed out, I would have said further than the wild card.
I would have, and I also wouldn't have castigated John Middleton as much as I did because I tore him apart. And had I known what he had up his sleeve, I'd have been a little bit easier on him. I still would have been angry at him for not improving or I should say, I'd be more. I shouldn't say him, but I would be. I would still be angry at Dombrowski over not improving the staff and the bullpen more than they did.
Right, and look, I think that's kind of the second part of where I was going with that was even with those additions in our predictions, say we knew Schwarber, Castellanos were going to be there, I still have no thing that I would have said, whether that's from lifelong years of being a Phillies fan, that they would have ever won the World Series. I would never have predicted that.
Right.
But I would have probably predicted they would have gone further than a wild card. But that's the funny thing. So with Schwarber and Castellanos, they still barely sneak in. Basically, they get in the second to the last regular season game of the season, oddly enough, in Houston. And what ends up basically killing them is starting pitching. That's the one nail in the coffin. The other nail in the coffin is that after game 3, the offense just goes stone cold. And
not Steve Austin.
No, not at all. It was more like Steve Austin's opponents, basically.
It was more like Gilbert.
Yeah. Basically, it was so bad that I was looking at some of the numbers that they were throwing up on the Cryons, and it was just awful. 8 for 92 after a certain point, and these ridiculous things that mathematics tells you that shouldn't be there, particularly with your lineup, right?
Right.
So anyway, we look. The Phillies took them to 6 games. I'm more than proud of that team. I really do think that was in my lifetime it's always really hard for me to say that there's any better team than the 93 Phillies, even though they didn't win the World Series. But I'm going to go 08, 08 Phillies, 93 Phillies, and then the 22 Phillies ahead of the 09 Phillies, just because they were a fun team. They were representative to me of the 93 Phillies. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think I still might have just had them. I don't see. It's hard for me to say with certainty if had we had Castellanos and Schwarber when we made that podcast, if I would have said, oh, they should easily, make it into the playoffs and progress a round or two. I don't know if I would have said that or not. But likely I would have, because you've got a masher of lineup there. I'm, but yeah, I think the enjoyment that I took out of this team wasn't matched by, this team was more enjoyable to me than the 2009 team, than the 2010 team, than the 2011 team. And we had some great, don't get me wrong, 2019 was fun as hell to watch. Cliff Lee, of all, like right. Watching him operate in the playoffs, and then the next year with Roy, and then getting the four aces together, and bringing Oswald in, and just like all the different pitching staff combinations we had after 2008. I think it goes 2008 simply because they won. 93 because 93 will always hold. I think any Phillies fan, holds a special place in their heart because it was so unexpected, and the guys were so, John Kruk, Darren Dalton, not so much now, but then Lenny Dykstra, guys that you like, this ragtag group, Pete Incaviglia, Jim Eisenreich, Terry Mulholland, Tommy Green, Kevin Stocker, Kim Batiste,
we can name the whole lineup.
Yeah, we can name the whole lineup.
Dave Hollins, yeah. Kevin Stocker at 324 that year. He's a rookie. We shouldn't know things like that.
Right. But this team is up there. It's definitely one of my top. It's my top three. It's number 3 in that list. And I think that really the only reason that 93 ranks above it is because of the fact that that was in our youth, and so it still has that nostalgia feeling to it. But honestly, you look at this team and there's so much to love about it. I mean, and we'll start. I don't want to get too deep into analyzing the why it's a likable team, because we have different ideas for this podcast. But there's something about a guy like Bryce Harper. There haven't been many in his position throughout the history of Major League Baseball that have decided to go all in on the Phillies. I can think of one other person, and that's Jim Thome. When the Phillies were nothing, right? For years. And Jim Thome saw an opportunity. He said, you know what? That's where I want to be. He chose us. And Bryce Harper went one better. Chose us. And not only did he choose us, he chose us for 13 years with a no-trade clause.
Yep.
So and I think he committed to the city.
And I think that's a great segue into what we're going to get into, is you're talking about his commitment to the city. The whole point we're recording this one is, look, it's way too early to even surmise what's going to happen for the 2023 Phillies. We're not going to do a rundown of what we think is going to happen next season. But now we're in the fun time of the offseason. And what you said there is perfect. He made the commitment to the Phillies. He is the centerpiece. And you can talk about years, you can talk about money, you can talk about whatever. I'm telling you right now, as we start talking about this, he is the reason why other people may actually come to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's flat out. So, so let's dig in. So, look, we're in the offseason now. NL champs, nothing to be ashamed of. But that taste now is fresh in our heads, in our mouths, whatever. But it's fresh in a lot of people. So now it's time to really kind of chomp down and say, what are the Phillies going to do? Let's just kind of go around position to position and just just kind of see what I want to see, what you think, what I think, and maybe just kind of have a conversation and maybe kind of loop back around to maybe some previous things we've talked about. Let's just start behind the plate. Look, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, JT Realmuto. Would we have said those words 5 months ago?
No, because how many months ago was it that we did a show where I talked about trading him?
Yeah, which was crazy because if you think about it, he was in year one of a 5-year, or was it year one or year two?
Year two.
Yeah. So yeah, he's in a really early part of a big 5-year money deal. But if you're trying to win, you're also trying to figure out any way to win. So that wasn't that crazy of a thought. So JT it really underperformed and didn't do a thing with the bat early in the season. And then, my goodness, does he not show once again who the best catcher in baseball is?
Yeah, absolutely. He when Bryce went down, we were all concerned. There were a lot of parts on this team that weren't performing, and there were a lot of parts on this team that really needed to step up, and JT is one who did. Absolutely, unequivocally, he put the team on his shoulders. Him, Schwarber, Hoskins, they all pulled together and just really dragged this team kicking and screaming forward. And a lot of credit to them, a lot of credit to Philly Rob for pushing the right buttons all year, and putting doing something that Joe Girardi what ultimately cost him his job, playing the kids, getting the kids a shot, man, putting Stott and Bohm in positions to play. Putting Matt Vierling in once the Phillies got Brandon Marsh, letting him come in and play, and just really relying on those young players to augment the star power that was already here, and really just ride that into the playoffs.
Right, and that and really that was kind of, honestly, it's weird. Offensively and in the field, that was kind of the Phillies' downfall prior to, because they were trying that. They tried that for years. Roman Quinn, Scott Kingery, and some of these other names, but it failed, and it failed over and over again. Mainly because, look, yeah, they were there with the onset of Bryce Harper coming into Philadelphia. The problem being is that, look, it's a team sport, and there's 9 guys on the field. There's whatever it is. There's 26 guys or however many at times with different rule variations and stuff that happens, all on your roster, able to play, pitch, whatever at that given time. There needs to be additional stars. And it wasn't until this year where you had, JT was obviously there before, but you had players like JT and then Schwarber and Castellanos starting the year. You had bona fide star power that wasn't, just Bryce. And that's why, you could try to wrap around 8 young guys around just Bryce. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. Unless they were all him. You know what I mean? You're not going to get that lucky. And I think that's why it failed. Now you have additional stars, you have additional veterans. You start wrapping those young guys around because they're able to learn from more than one person. So let's finish talking about catching real quick. JT is locked in, obviously, for 23. I would think that Garrett Stubbs holds on to the backup role. I don't have any insight on this unless you have any takes on this.
I would imagine he would. I can't remember the kid's name down in Double or Triple A, but they do have somebody waiting in the wings. But I feel like at this point he's blocked.
Right. Yeah.
Unless there's a position change that takes place, and maybe you move him to one of the corners, but or as a DH. I know he can hit, but I feel like he's, they're not going to move him to DH. They've got two.
Right. No, and I think that's going to be there's a huge logjam if we're talking about DH, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move up to first base. And I think this is a good conversation we could have for quite some time. And this could probably be a whole episode within and of itself. But we need to be, mindful of our time here.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you think first about first base and where this could possibly go.
Dude, this one's hard. This one's hard for me to say because I like the guy. He's extremely likable. There are times when he is scorching hot and there's nobody better. We've seen Rhys Hoskins have the highest of highs. We've seen him have the lowest of lows. And the problem is he's just too damn streaky. And on this team, you have too many people that are too streaky for him to be. He's not a defensive liability, but he's not. And correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe the stats bear this out different, but the eye test says he's not a plus player defensively at first base.
Yeah, I don't even have to look up the stats. I think we both know that.
So with the defensive deficiencies, and obviously first base is normally not a, that's not going to be a super. That's not going to be your best defender.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But still can't be costing you runs. Remember when Ryan Howard, at the beginning of his career, how he was such a detriment at first base defensively, and he was such a liability, and eventually he became a better fielder. I haven't seen that same kind of improvement out of Rhys. And there's plays that you could point to this postseason that cost them runs. And so it's time, I think, to maybe look to move on. Now, who they might try to replace him with, I don't know. I don't know if you try to move Stott over or Bohm over to first and play Castellanos or Schwarber at third, or even put one of them at first, just to make room, because I had some designs for the DH position. Which we'll talk about in a little bit.
No, I like that.
But I feel like it's time to move on from him. Thank you for everything you've done, but it's time.
No, I love the fact that you gave us a little precursor into talking about DH, because a lot of this it's weird. A lot of this revolves around that. Look, there has to be an obvious upgrade over Rhys. He's turning 30 as the 23 season begins. I'm not saying he's old. Look, he's young buck compared to you and me. But he's also a Major League Baseball player, so he should be entering his prime of all sorts, I guess, or should be already be there, I guess. That's what I should be saying. He should be in his prime.
Right.
But I looked this up, and I thought this was interesting. So, like I said, it has to be an obvious upgrade. So I looked at the free agents, and really the only true one to really consider is Anthony Rizzo. Currently the Yankees, former Cub, very well-known first baseman. So for this year, Rhys Hoskins, and I'm going to use an advanced metric here. We'll use WAR and wins above replacement. Rhys was 2.9 over the course of 589 at-bats. I use that as and I'm saying that just because just gives kind of a better estimation of game time. I know with WAR is kind of a thing all across your entirety as a player, but I'm using that as a thing. So 589 at bats and good enough for 2.9 wins over a replacement, which is not horrible, but it is what it is. Look at Anthony Rizzo though, and he's 33 plus. Right now, so he's a bit older than Rhys, but his WAR in 2022 was 2.3 over 465 at bats. So if you math it out, it's basically identical. So you have the top free agent first baseman right now is essentially older and no better than Rhys. So if I were the Phillies, I would not be looking at Anthony Rizzo. There's no point. He's an older version of the same player. I'm not saying that he's going to show up any better or worse defensively. I'm not going to say he's going to show up any better or worse offensively, but if you're basically swapping out the player, just an older model. Okay, so that's where I stand on that. However, I do think there's some other ideas. You could, I believe Reese is in the last year of a contract. You could trade him out, or not contract, but is in his final year, I guess, under control as a Philly. You could trade him out for started pitching, or move him for an outfielder or something, whatever. Move Schwarber, Castellanos to first base. Again, I don't know how much of a defensive upgrade Schwarber would be. Very limited time at first base. Castellanos, I think, would make a better move to first if that were the case, just on the sheer fact that the guy, if I remember correctly, came up as a third baseman. So you would think that the defense would be, some grade level better. But again, I'm not all into that. Look, there just has to be an obvious upgrade if they go the free agent route. For the Phillies, if they do want to continue what they're doing as far as playoff aspirations, and I completely agree with you, it's time to move on. I really do. I hate to say that because I love Rhys Hoskins. I love the energy, but he showed himself how much of a defensive liability he is. And the logjam at DH, I don't think there's a spot for him. All right. So enough at first base. Let's move up to second base. Let's kind of talk about second base and shortstop, I guess, kind of together, because this is kind of where the Phillies will end up having to make a big free agent splash, mainly because we have a second baseman that has entered the free agent market in Gene Segura. So do you have any takes on second base, shortstop? Yes. I know this is kind of a big area, so let's do this one.
All right, so let's start off by saying that we're bringing in a shortstop. We are bringing in a shortstop. Now I don't know which one of these guys it's going to be. I have a feeling I know, but Stott's going to move to second, because I believe, and I could be off on this, but I swear I thought I read something that he was naturally a second baseman. But you move Stott to second, and then there's 4 guys that I could see us getting. And I'm going to put them in no particular order, but I will tell you who I want, and I will tell you who we're going to end up getting, because I know I can see it. All right, so the Xander Bogaerts from Boston, he opted out. I think he would work. Carlos Correa, consistently 20-plus homers, 279 career average. He would slot right in there real nice. The guy that I want, and who is like really good friends with Bryce Harper.
Yes.
All right, so Trey Turner, career 302 hitter, 20-plus homers, is where he slots in. Bryce Harper's best friend in baseball, apparently. He's been trying to court him here for as long as he's been here. The talk at the meet at the everything that we're hearing from like John Heyman and some of the guys that are plugged in are saying, don't be surprised if he ends up with the Phillies. And then we have the guy that I absolutely do not want, and who is going to end up being our new shortstop, Dansby Swanson. And the numbers are there. I hate his name.
His name. I love that. That's your okay. So you mentioned the exact 4 guys I was going to talk about. I love the fact that you don't like Dansby because of his name. I don't like it either, but but I would much rather have him than Carlos Correa, and only for the sheer fact that I don't think Carlos Correa slots in Philly well, mainly because he has ties to Houston, ties to cheating. I don't like it. Good numbers, but I also think Carlos Correa is going to end up commanding the most money of the 4. And I don't, obviously don't want that. Trey Turner to me fits the best. I hope he's the one that ends up there. I'll take Xander or Dansby, either or. I have no. Their numbers are similar. The age is similar. I don't, have any which way or there. I guess I would prefer Dansby over Xander only on the sheer fact that it would take him away from the Braves completely. but Atlanta tends to churn out all these young guys, so who knows who's next.
Goldberg.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think we both know going into this 2023 that second base shortstop is going to be some combination of Bryson Stott and then Turner, Swanson, Bogarts, or Correa. I mean, simple as that. I would I be mad if the Phillies signed Correa? Of course not. But I would only be mad if the fact is that Turner, Swanson, and Bogarts were completely off the table.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
All right. Third base. I believe Bohm has that locked down, and I don't think there's any conversation that we need to have about third base unless you have something with that.
No. He turned it up in the postseason. I think he showed up and showed us what the future holds a little bit. Obviously, there's room for improvement, but I feel like he and Stott both, even though the numbers weren't necessarily there for Stott, but they acquitted themselves very well, and I feel like they're gonna be cornerstones of this lineup going forward.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't have anything to say on Stott. Now let's move to the outfield. Or excuse me, on Bohm. Let's move to the outfield. Look, we can kind of throw some things around here. I think this kind of rolls itself into the DH as well. So, and mainly because of the logjam and a lot of the players that are always mentioned for the DH happen to be outfielders, particularly for the Phillies. Before we get into, I guess, talking about our corners, I do want to mention on center fielder, I'm really curious. I know you and I have texted about this before. I've texted about this with a couple of other people as well. Brandon Marsh, what do you think with him 2023 and beyond Philadelphia Phillies as the quote unquote everyday center fielder?
I like Brandon Marsh. I think that he, when he came here, he was more brought in for his defense than his offense. But he showed in flashes that we might have gotten a steal. We might have a very capable offensive center fielder who also is very capable defensively. And to me, honestly, if we can get, production like we got out of him, I have no problem having him be the everyday center fielder. I was very impressed in the playoffs with him.
Yeah, my only concern was that he was out of the lineup in matchup situations for Matt Vierling. And this is not a dog on Matt Vierling. This is just a concern on Marsh's production against both left and right-handed hitting. I just was concerned to see him out of the lineup, mainly because of the way that went. It wasn't just him though. There was times when Edmundo Sosa, was in the lineup as well instead of Bryson Stott. Again, you're talking about young kids,
right?
So there's rationale for that, and you typically see that more at that level, I guess, if you will, until they really find their niche, if you will. But that's my only concern, is that I really want Marsh to excel. I want him as our everyday center fielder.
Right.
But what I don't want is to see him be playing 90 to 100, 110 games. I want him in 130, 140 games. I want him to be the, like I said, quote unquote, everyday center fielder.
Right.
I want him to be able to, be there. My only thought on center field, and I only say this, was I know the Phillies at times have sought out the Pirates center fielder Brian Reynolds. I just wonder if, there's Middleton money there to, kind of, trade somebody's for that. I doubt it, but it was a thought to kind of coerce Brian Reynolds away. I don't know.
So They tend to do that with the Pirates, which is weird to me because the Pirates are never good. But there's always a player that they covet that the Pirates have. Tends to be outfielders too. Um, but if I'm looking, so my major addition, well, and let me say this too. I hate the whole situational taking Marsh out. I understand it, but I hate it. Um, Let him play, you know.
Mhm.
But like you
Because
said,
he's not going to succeed if he's not in there.
right? He's never going to improve against left-handed hitting or left-handed pitching or whatever if he's never facing left-handed pitchers. If you're taking him out, let him go in and see what he can do. Um, if I am John Middleton and Dave Dombrowski and anybody else that's involved in the front office, there is an interesting name that's out there, and he's an outfielder who could also be a DH. And I've mentioned him to you before. He's a Japanese player, plays for the Nippon Ham Fighters in Japanese Major League Baseball.
Which is an awesome name.
Yeah, it is. It's not a name that we made up for baseball stars. It's an actual Japanese baseball team. So in 7 seasons, Masataka Yoshida has 133 home runs, 467 runs, 421 walks, a 321 average, and a .960 OPS.
Yeah, and that could translate. I see that kind of. Not, here's my thing. I hear that, and again, I'm just using whatever. I hear a 280, 20 home run guy in the majors for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hear. Brandon Marsh, what was 230, 240 hitter? I'm not saying he's not capable of higher, but typically at this point, you kind of know where they're going to fall average wise. So you're looking for power if their average is low. That's why we'll talk about Kyle Schwarber. But look, I just don't think that Marsh has it in him to be a 280 hitter. So that would make it really interesting to go overseas and find, somebody from Japan or wherever. I would not hate it at all.
Well, and here's my thought process: is look, man, we can't, if Marsh isn't going to be the dude, we need to do something major to get somebody here. And even if Marsh is the dude, we need to figure out what we're doing with Castellanos, because Castellanos fucking floundered last year. Not only just in the playoffs, during the regular season, he was not good. He had his moments, but he was not up to his normal snuff. You know what I mean? Like he's
we need to talk about Castellanos a little bit, and I don't want to be ill of him whatsoever, mainly
right.
because we've look, we got what he did this year for us, and it was nowhere near what he did in Cincinnati the year prior. Look, the year prior, the guy hit, what was his stats? 34 home runs and knocked in 100.
Right.
In similar time, he hit 13 homers and knocked in 62 with us, and his average went down about 40 points. Here's my problem, is that Castellanos historically at the plate, again, looking at the advanced metric of WAR here, is very hot and cold. And I say that in terms of this. So ever since he started becoming a full-time player, I'm going to read you this off Baseball Reference on his offensive WAR. This was starting in 2014. Negative 0.1, 1.3, 2.3, 0.1, 2.8, 1.0, 1.8, 0.0, 3.2, negative 0.1. Negative 0.1 was us with the Phillies. So he's primed basically to have a decent season next year, but I hate to say this. if I would have really have done my research on him, like I would have not signed him to a large contract because historically, if you sign like what we signed into 5 years and 100 mil or whatever it was, he's going to give you 3 of those 5 years at really, average or sub-average numbers. And 2 of those 5 years, man, he's going to all-star it. Is that worth it? I mean, can you wrap your team around when Castellanos decides to get his act together? I don't know. I mean, and I'm not dogging the guy. I really like him. I love the way that his family has been on social media, and they've really, I love it. They've really, kind of taken to Philly, and I see they still have their ties to Cincinnati and doing their work there, and I think that's great. I love it. But man, I don't know.
Right.
It sucks because it's like it can't just say, well, you're the 4th outfielder because we're paying you $20 million a year.
Right. And just looking at it, just to give you an idea where they all fall. And I don't know because this website's very limited. Brandon Marsh, though, according to the Phillies website, hit 288 this year. And you've got Nick Castellanos at 263.
Yeah, Castellanos at 263. Did March hit 288 with the Phillies this year? Wow.
Yeah, he hit 288. The only people that hit.
Oh, he hit 245 overall. Okay, I'm sorry.
Right. He hit 288 with the Phils. 245 overall.
Yeah, he hit 226 in Los Angeles. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, and I mean, it could be, some guys go from the American League to National League, and then they for whatever reason it clicks and
change the scenery too. You know.
So, and different different hitting coaches, different. There's so many different things that can play into it. And he's still a young guy, so it's not strange to see that kind of change happen. Will it carry over going forward? Who knows? He hit pretty well in the playoffs. But, you've got too many players on this team that are hitting, that are underachieving as far as batting average is concerned. We've got to bring some guys in that can actually hit the ball. Matt Vierling, 246. Rhys Hoskins was 246. Odubel Herrera, when he was playing, was 238. Stott hit 234 this year for us. Schwarber, 218. Didi Gregorius was at 210 when he played. We've got Derek Hall at 250. Nick Maton at 250. Bradley Zimmer, 250. So many people at 250 or below.
Right.
And the only people that were above 300 were Edmundo Sosa, who we got that was close to the trade deadline, and Dalton Guthrie, who I don't remember him even playing for us.
Yeah, he was he came up from the minors for us. But yeah, he's got his cup of coffee with us, and that was about it. Even in the playoffs. My thing is, look, Schwarber, obviously that's his MO. Like, he's not going to hit, but look, National League home run champ.
Right.
So he's going to slot in as your everyday left fielder, unless there's a change there, whatever. We've talked about that. I don't know that, whatever is going to happen happens with him, but I foresee next year him being the everyday, whatchamacallit?
DH.
Yeah, right. Everyday left fielder for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and my apologies on Guthrie. I think he just played at the end of the season. I don't know that he ever saw. I thought he was on the playoff roster at some point.
He might have been, but
I thought he was. Yeah,
I don't remember much about hearing Guthrie.
Anyway, center fielder, we'll just say March for now. I don't know that there's a change there. For the for the Phillies in that spot. Right field is the question, and a lot of that hinges on Bryce Harper's injury.
Right.
Does Harper return to right? And now, if that happens, let's say he does return to right field. Does that put Nick Castellanos at DH? And which is weird because I tell you what, man, Nick made some insanely great plays for us in the playoffs. I don't know. It's a weird conundrum. My thing is that there's a logjam at DH. Any of the aforementioned players like Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos, any of those guys would be our DH, dependent upon spots. My thing is, going back to Rhys Hoskins, if they do want to make a move Rhys Hoskins for credible outfielder, slot him whoever the credible outfielder is. I don't know who that may be. Put him in the outfield somewhere, and then make that other outfielder, Schwarber, Castellanos, whoever, that is not there able to play, put them in DH if Harper's out there. If you're looking at free agency, maybe someone like Profar or Peterson, if they're looking at a top-notch outfielder. I mean, obviously, there's no way they're going after like a Brandon Nimmo or an Aaron Judge type. But if they're looking for a good, solid outfielder that way, I could see them going Profar or Peterson. I doubt it. I'm kind of spitballing here, but
no, I think that their spending this year is going to be going to be Trey Turner, and it's going to be pitching.
Pitching, yep, and that's what we're going to talk about. So let's get into pitching.
Before we get to pitching, so who do you have any websites up right now as far as that have defensive wins above replacement?
I've got reference up. I've just been looking at batting though,
because I'm wondering what the difference between Castellanos and Schwarber's fielding percentage and their defensive WAR, because if one or the other is better, maybe that's the answer right there. I feel like the eye test tells me that Castellanos is a good fielder, and maybe he goes to left if if they end up bringing if Harper can come back and play right field, or if they bring in Yoshida from Japan, then maybe you move Marsh and put, or you play him in one of the outfield positions and slide some Castellanos to left, or even put him in left and then put Castellanos or put Schwarber at first.
Yeah, I was trying to do a little research on defense. I'm looking at Castellanos right now, and it's interesting. So I'm just going to kind of comb through some of his fielding for 2022. His fielding percentage, which this is going to be hard to believe overall, and he played right field and a little bit of left field. Not much, 3 games in left field, but he was right at perfect. There was no errors committed. So I don't have the advanced metric on that. I'm just looking at straight fielding percentage. Kyle Schwarber, let me look him up real quick while we're doing this. Again, looking at his standard fielding, I'm not talking about anything crazy. He did commit an error, so it puts him down a little bit. But does it necessarily make him worse? Leading the league in home runs with 46 comparative to, Nick's 13. I'll take the error. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I just looked it up. So Kyle Schwarber has played 1 game in the majors at first base.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's what I think is funny. I saw the comment made on, and that's the reason why I say that. Talking about earlier, there has to be an obvious upgrade to Hoskins, and I even mentioned moving Schwarber to first base, and you did too. But the funny thing is, it's like I saw a comment saying, Dog and Hoskins fielding, and it's like, yeah, the obvious move is Schwarber. And it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. It's not obvious. And that's the whole point. It has to be an obvious upgrade. It has to be.
Right. And so, I mean, at this point, looking at the market, if you're not able to make a corresponding move to bring in a first baseman, maybe Reese is our best bet. As much as I don't want that to be the case, and I feel shitty saying it because I really do like Reese Hoskins. I think he's a good player. But he's a better human. I wish he wasn't so hot and cold, and I wish his fielding was better. But if his fielding was better and he wasn't so hot and cold, we wouldn't be talking about getting rid of him.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. So let's look at pitching. I'm just gonna shoot off the cuff here with my takes on locks, and I'm gonna see who you think are locks as starters. I've got Nola, I've got Wheeler, and I've got Ranger Suarez as locks. Who do you have? Do you have any?
So Wheeler and Suarez. I think Andrew Painter will be up. So as far as Nola's concerned, I actually was kind of hoping that we either A, wouldn't exercise his option, or B, we would exercise the option and look at potentially trading him.
Which now we're in the B because they've exercised it.
So, and I know that sounds kind of weird, like he's one of the only two legitimate starting pitchers we have, but he's another guy that I see in that Reese Hoskins mold, where when he's on, dude is fucking lasered in. When he's not great. And the biggest issue with him has been late in the season. He starts off like a house on fire, and then by the end of the season, he's cooled off considerably.
Yeah, he's gassed.
Right. And he's done, he did well in the playoffs for us, well enough for the first few series. But it seemed like during the Padres series in the National League Championship, he started to kind of fade. You could see it. You could see it gradually just starting to slip away, and then he hit the wall.
Yeah.
And so he's somebody that, I mean, is it too early to give up on him? He's young. He's relatively young. But I feel like he kind of is who he is at this point. Much like you were saying with how Marsh hit, he kind of is who he is. And I don't know if that's something that, we saw it with Cole Hamels in 2008 into 2009. Cole Hamels was lights out the entire year 2009. The extended postseason took a toll on him. When he came back in 2009, he was slow out of the gate because he was so tired. He was exhausted, and then he didn't have time to properly recover in the offseason. So knowing that Nola hits a wall late in the season, how is this prolonged postseason going to affect him?
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, I hold Nola in a little more high regard than Hoskins, only because of the track record. I think is a little better.
Oh yeah,
not much, but like here's my thing. I think I have more of a sentiment thing for Nola. Nola is basically our last connection back to the previous run. Nola actually pitched with Hamels, and so like there's some connection there, which I think is awesome. Nola, whenever he came in, he came out of LSU, was never supposed to be a top flight starter. He was never supposed to be a number one. Nola was made a number one from the Phillies. He was never supposed to be a number one, though. He was a 2 or 3. That's what they said all along. And look, we can talk all day long about how scouts are wrong and all this stuff, but Nola was never supposed to be a true number one. He was not the Verlander. He was not the Kershaw. He was not. He was a good pitcher. He was supposed to be a good middle of the rotation, number 2, number 3, never a number 1 type pitcher. The Phillies had a need for a number 1 type pitcher, and so guess who that was going to be made was him, until Zach Wheeler came along in free agency. So now you had well, Danielle's going to say hi. You're going to say hi.
Is Trey a Philly yet?
Soon enough, my friend.
Said soon enough. Soon enough. That's it.
That's all I wanted to.
All right. That's all she wanted to input. So my thing is, it's like, I think he's there. He's locked in. I just don't know what else you could. I mean, who could you possibly trade? Trade bait wise. I mean, who do you think he? I mean, the guy. I mean, not well, but he pitched in the World Series at this point. So who do you think he would command?
So that's where, and this is where it gets interesting with Hoskins. So what do we need? We need a good first baseman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who's out there that could be pried away at first base for a number 2 or 3 starter? Because everybody needs pitching. Everybody always needs pitching. And I think a 2 or 3 starter could command a decent amount on the trade market. Obviously, you've then got to fill that spot. But there's some free agents out there that we'll get into that could potentially slot in there nicely. So it's just one of those things where it's really everything needs a corresponding move in order to make sense.
Right.
So, but we trade him for, an established veteran first baseman or somebody young on an expiring contract.
Okay.
And that we can then sign to a long-term deal. And then once we've got that person in place, then we look to move Rhys Hoskins, and we move him for maybe bullpen parts. And then, then we can go to free agency for starting pitching. But you've already got 3 of your starters in Andrew Painter, in Zach Wheeler, and in Ranger Suarez.
And here's my thing. I think, by the way, I think Ranger Suarez is cool as a cucumber. I really wish we have gotten to see him pitch Game 7. My thing with Aaron Nola is that he came into the league. The scouts all told us that he was not supposed to be a number 1. The Phillies made him a number 1, and obviously we kind of see he's a great pitcher. Obviously, a fantastic pitcher for us. My take is that you get a top flight and you don't have him as the number 1. Maybe he goes back to what he should be, middle of the rotation. And I think that's when he excels. This way he doesn't have all the pressure on him at the high end situations. And that might, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I could see that. I could see, it. I mean, and that honestly makes it better as far as trying to fill out the starting rotation. You bring in one good starter.
And I think that's where if we miss out on the shortstop thing, which I highly doubt, or they do both, which possible, do they dump a lot of money into a Carlos Rodon?
I listen, honestly, I see them spending big in 2 areas this year: starting pitching and shortstop. That's the 2, and that's like we talked about. Like, I have my list of players, and all of the position players there's 5 position players on my list. 4 of them are shortstops. One of them is Yoshida, and he's not even in the majors right now.
So what pitchers are you looking at then, starting wise, or across the board?
So starting pitchers, I tried to go a little bit off the beaten path to try and see how things would work out. So obviously, your Clayton Kershaw, everybody should talk to him. He's going back to the Dodgers. That's pretty much signed, sealed, delivered at this point. Right. Justin Verlander, be cool to see him in Philly, but then again, he's also he's almost our age. So when we talk about, Rhys Hoskins getting old at 30, and obviously pitchers age differently, but
he's literally us.
Yeah. So Nathan Eovaldi, career 4.16 ERA. He's been sub 4 the past 2 years. Mike Clevenger, who we saw in the playoffs, he's got a career 3.39 ERA. He looked damn good in Phillies pinstripes. Kohei Arihara, who he hasn't had success in the majors yet, but he could be a low risk, high reward. Oh, you know what? Maybe Yoshida didn't play for the Ham Fighters. This dude did, but he could be. He's a free agent. He played for the Ham Fighters, had a good career in Japan. Hasn't really hit it in the States yet, but could be a good low risk. Like I said, low risk, high reward. And worst comes worst, he slots into the bullpen as long relief. Zach Eflin.
Mm-hmm.
We could bring him back. He's a known quantity. He's had some rough patches with injuries, but we could bring him back. And then another one that may slot in better, almost as a long relief or a bullpen piece, would be or maybe like back of the rotation kind of guy, Chris Archer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a career 3.93 ERA. His ERA's gone up the past few years, but he's somebody that could easily slot in at the bottom of the rotation, at the back end of the rotation, or fill a long relief, like bridge kind of spot.
Right. Yeah, and that's what. So my thought was, okay, so like Nola Wheeler Ranger, and then you said Andy Painter. I just wonder how long it's going to be until he, actually joins the rotation. I don't know that he starts the year in the rotation, only because like he's just now. I think he finally this year sniffed AA. And I read something about the possible fifth starter could be another Phillies minor leaguer, Griff McGarry. I don't know that that's the case, but that's what I've read. I would like to see at the back of the rotation, or middle of the rotation, I should say. I would love to see Eflin come back. I'd love them to see him look at two guys that I've always liked in Jameson Taillon and Taiwan Walker. I don't know that they'll spend the money on either of those guys, but again, to me, at this point in their careers, where they should have been number ones or number twos, they found their ways as number threes and number fours, and I would love to have one or the other.
And I almost wrote Taiwan Walker on here, but I didn't want you to think that I was just trying to get a Walker on the team.
No, I've always liked both those guys. I always thought they were just very capable pitchers. Relief wise, this is tough. I mean, here's my thing. We need to do better than what we did last year with Brad Hand and Familia and spending $10 million on Corey Knebel, and they just need to do better. There's some solid pieces right now in Seranthony. I think Alvarado, outside of the, giving up the 3-run home run to Alvarez, and we can't look at one pitch as being, whatever, especially to a, look, I can dump on the Astros all I want to, but Alvarez is a darn good ball player. That's what my dog thinks of Alvarez, by the way.
I just wonder what the hell that was.
Yeah. But I'm not cutting that either.
No, don't leave it in there.
But no, I think we've got solid pieces there, but they need to do better. So do they look at actually locking a closer in at this point with Kenley Jansen's available, even Craig Kimbrell's, which is I don't really like the guy. I mean, is there is that something they look at? I don't know.
So I had 5 people down, and a couple of them are really, for the most part, my list is guys that are, again, more low risk, high reward. Invite them into maybe on like a minor league tryout or major league invite for spring training. See what happens. See how it goes. But one that I definitely want to go after is Michael Fulmer from Detroit, career 3.89 ERA. Bring him in here. Miguel Castro, he's had some injury issues, should be relatively cheap. Probably bring him in, see what he's got left in the can. Joely Rodriguez, former Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Bring him back. See what he can do. See what he does. See if he's Jose Alvarez, another former Philly. Bring him back. See what he can do. And then my final, and you're either going to completely turn on me on this one, where you're going to really like the idea. And this is, again, a very, 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 very low risk, high reward type situation. One Mr. Ken Giles.
No, I think that would be awesome. What's he doing? He's in Toronto, isn't he?
No, he was released. He was he bounced around. I think the last team he was with was the Giants, and he was I think he's somewhere on the West Coast, I believe, and he was sent to the minors, and he's a free agent now, so he could be a non-roster invitee.
Yeah, I would love to see him kind of kick back around. Oh, Seattle. He was with Seattle. That's right, Toronto in 2020. He did pitch in 5 games with weird numbers.
Yeah, he wasn't good.
No, didn't give up a run, but walked 4 over 5 innings, struck out 6. So kind of strange numbers. His yeah, no, I always thought he was awesome. I don't know that. Yeah, you're right. He's probably at this point a non-roster invitee, but I mean, heck, for a spot in the bullpen,
yeah,
that'd be kind of cool. No, I think it's interesting. Look, they have a bulk of their lineup and a bulk of the pitching down. It's just a matter of trying to avoid the same mistakes that they did last year in the offseason. And I'm not saying that, obviously Schwarber wasn't a mistake, led the league at home runs. And I hope Castellanos proves me wrong, showed himself defensively. The bat needs to show up. Needs to have a 30 home run, 100 RBI season for me to really think that he's, good enough to be, hitting 5th in the lineup. Pitching, get us a good starter, get us a couple more bullpen arms, and this team's making the playoffs again easily.
Just no more Uris Familia.
No more Brad Hand.
No more Brad Hand.
No
more Corey Knebel.
No.
I think it can't happen. I mean, fuck, you might as well bring back Heathcliff Slocum and bring Ricky Bowe in off of the post game.
He might have done better than Familia.
Yeah. Shit, Michael Barkan might have done better than Familia.
That's a good point. I don't know. We'll do a deep dive as the off season kind of wraps up, and of course we say that, and then like a week later, Middleton will sign whoever's left.
Yeah.
Because he did that last year.
Yeah.
But we'll try to do a deep dive as the season actually gets closer and what we think is going to happen. Look, last year I think we both kind of settled on 85 to 89 wins and a wild card appearance, and I think we were right on the money, knowing what we knew then.
Yeah.
So that means listen to our podcast all the time.
Exactly, because we're right.
That's right.
Fuck the Astros.